call the Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 meeting of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Coulter.
Present.
Hugheim.
Here.
Guess everybody's here. Lewis.
Here.
Thorson.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
All are present. There is a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Hugheim with a second by Commissioner Thorson to approve the agenda for the May 10th, 2022 HRA board meeting. May we have the roll call vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to organizational business. First item of
We have to approve the minutes, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the minutes, item number 3. Are there any additions or corrections to the April 26, 2022 HRA board meeting minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Second. It has been moved by Commissioner Thorson with a second by Commissioner Coulter to approve the April 26, 2022 HRA board meeting minutes. May we have the vote, please?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
For clarity, if I may abstain on that one, since I wasn't present.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Martin abstains.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, organizational business. Item 4.1, it's an introduction. Anna Salvador, introduction.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lewis. So the Community Development Department is pleased to welcome Anna Salvador, who started on May 2nd. She is an HRA program specialist, too, and she'll be focusing on Section 8 program and case management. Anna's originally from California, where she began her career in affordable housing. She received her bachelor's degree in anthropology from San Diego State University and a master's in international development with an emphasis in urban affairs and planning from University of Pittsburgh, Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. Anna has been working in the affordable housing industry in a variety of capacities for the last 4 years, and she is virtually with us tonight to join us and introduce. Hi, Anna.
Yeah, welcome, Anna. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about yourself? I don't know if
Can you hear us?
Doesn't seem like she can hear us. We did have a little bit of difficulty yesterday evening. She does have a new computer, so we're getting it worked out. But she has been with us, and we're excited to have her. It doesn't look like she can hear us.
All right. But thank you for introducing her.
Sorry, here she is. Hi, Anna.
Okay. We've been talking behind your back. No. We want to welcome you. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm originally from California. I worked for the city of Mountain View out there for a number of years and then recently moved to the area. I'm happy to be joining the HRA team. I've been really impressed with the team so far and the years of experience that the whole team brings to the table. So excited to be working with all of you moving forward as well.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. And I'm sure you moved to Minnesota for the weather, right?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. No regrets.
All right, good. Well, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, we are going to move on to the next item. So glad you could join us tonight. Now we are moving on to item 4.2, the contract for HRA Board Consul Services. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, our CFO, Lori Economy Scholler, is here.
Good evening, Commissioner President and Commissioners. As part of our normal procurement practice, we go out for RFP for major services like bond attorneys. So we did go out for an RFP this spring, and we had 3 bidders. And through the criteria that we utilized, Kennedy and Graven continues to be our bond attorney, and we are asking the HRA board if they would approve that for their bond attorney also.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Hearing no questions, thank you. This is short and sweet.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the professional services agreement for the HRA's board consul services with Kennedy and Graven?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Hukim with a second by Commissioner Martin to approve the professional services agreement for the HRA's bond consul services with Kennedy and Graven. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, may we have the vote, please?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to number 5, new business. I see there is no new business for this evening.
There's no new business.
Thank you. Now moving on to number 6, our discussion items. The first item is 6.1, a development update. May we have the development update, please? Welcome, Glenn.
Sure. Chair Lewis, Commissioners, good evening. I'm Glenn Markegard. I'm Planning Manager with Bloomington, and here to give a brief development update. Please jump in with any questions or comments along the way. And Erica and Mike jump in as well throughout. So, first of all, this map depicts residential development and just development within the last couple of years. These are projects that have either recently been completed in the last 2 years, or they're under construction, or they've been approved for future construction. And if you add up everything on this map, you'll see that there are 24 projects and 3,410 units, which is a lot of units. That's not normal. Normal decade recently has been around 900 in a decade, so 3,400 in just a few years is highly abnormal. I like to think about market sector waves. If you look at any market sector, be it retail, office, residential, it's going to go in waves. And this residential wave is the biggest wave that I've observed in 24 years at Bloomington. So that's of any market sector. So a huge wave. We think there still is some run in that wave. We continue to get phone calls, developers looking for sites in Bloomington. We have a couple projects in the discussion stage right now. So we're going to have some more coming up soon as well. But looking at this map, one thing that stands out to me is the distribution. We do have quite a few in the South Loop District, especially the eastern edge of the South Loop District. But outside of that, it's pretty well distributed throughout the community. I'm going to talk a little bit about first projects that are under construction right now. So I know you're familiar with a lot of these because they've been HRA assisted. And one of those HRA assisted projects is at 8012 Old Cedar, 68 units. This project has been framed up. Most of the work is interior at this point. And then we have the Hra Apartments. This is the former Crown Plaza Hotel. It's being converted to residential. In terms of units, 229 units. It's currently in progress, and something unique about this project is there's a lot of affordability, but no public assistance. It's all non-assisted development. And really the way they were able to do that is because it is a conversion in very small units. They're able to hit a pretty high level of affordability without any public assistance. Then we have the Riser Senior Apartments. This is on 34th Avenue. These are 146 units and just starting to come up out of the ground now. They're starting with framing. This project also is not assisted. It meets our minimum affordability level, 9% at 60% AMI, but there's no port or HRA assistance on this project. And then also starting construction, they're just in the grading stage. It's the BCS4 apartments at Bloomington Central Station, the latest phase of apartments. That's 405 units, and this is a Port Authority assisted project. So looking at entitled projects that have not yet started construction, these include the Solo apartments. You may know them. Rosa is the developer. This is 183 units, Port Authority assisted. Hopefully starts construction this summer. And we have the Ardor Apartments just across the street, also in South Loop, on American Boulevard, far eastern portion of American Boulevard. These are market rate apartments, so no public assistance. In the 11 projects we've had since the Opportunity Housing Ordinance was adopted, this is the only one that is going the fee in lieu route. The other 10 have all provided affordable housing. So the money that they would contribute would go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and then potentially be used for this other project by the same developer on an adjacent site. It's the Quinn Apartments, and the Quinn Apartments, 86 units, 100% affordable, and that would be Port Authority assisted in addition to the fee in lieu funds. Then we have the recent 8200 Humboldt Apartments, was at Consul last night for TIF approval, and that was approved. 149 units. This is obviously HRA assisted, and should get underway this summer or fall in terms of start of construction. Then we have the Penn Terrace Apartments on Penn Avenue near 102nd Street. And here we have 68 units. This would be a tax credit project, and they're waiting for tax credits to get started. And then the Penn Townhomes at 86th and Penn. This would be 15 townhome units. Whether it moves forward is uncertain. There's a lawsuit in progress at this time. In terms of recently completed residential projects, we've had quite a few. You're very familiar with a lot of these. Lindale Flats, 81 units on Lindale. This was HRA assisted. The Amira Senior Apartments recently opened. This is on American Boulevard in the Normandale Lake District, fully market rate. Cherrywood Point, adjacent to Amira, fully market rate, is open as well. This is assisted living, 118 units. Blooming Meadows, you're very familiar with, HRA assisted, 172 units in the South Loop District. Friendship Village, this is an independent senior housing, market rate, 93 units. Founders Ridge recently opened 111 units. Again, market rate is senior only. And Hra Assisted District Apartments, you're very familiar with, 248 units in the Penn American District. Hayden Grove, Senior Living, another Hra Assisted project, 166 units, senior. And then 108 Place Apartments, again, Hra Assisted, 42 units. Then the Fenley Apartments, this is Port Assisted, fairly recently opened last year, 402 units. Before I move into commercial, any questions or comments on the residential?
Thank you, Glenn. You mentioned the roughly 3,400 units. Do you know approximately how many of those are affordable at 60% AMI or lower?
Yes, Chair Lewis, Commissioner Coulter actually have a cheat sheet here.
I thought you might.
And so this is looking at all of the recent units. It's from our one-pager. So there may be some projects that are not on this that are in the slide presentation. But looking at that, looks like we had 444 units at the 60% AMI level, 178 at the 50% AMI level, and 33 at the 30% AMI level.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Markegard? Hearing none.
All right, I'll shift gears a little bit and talk about commercial industrial development. So commercial industrial things have been more at a typical pace, not necessarily more than normal, not less than normal. This is recent years have been a typical pace. Recent hot sectors include hotels. Now that's a couple of years back. We had a hotel wave. Since COVID and impacts on business travel, the phone's just not been ringing for new hotels, so I think it'll be a few years before that sector comes back again. Self-storage has been another hot sector. Recently, the city adopted a moratorium, made some changes in the zoning standards, so we've not seen any additional self-storage since then. And then most recently, auto dealers. We've had a lot of auto dealer activity. I'll highlight a few of those. You can see most of the projects are concentrated along 494 or Lyndale Avenue. And I would note, too, that we've lost projects recently due to high construction costs. That's been a big factor, both on residential and commercial industrial. We've seen really rapid increases in construction costs. So in terms of what we have under construction right now in commercial industrial, the Walzer Toyota building, the parking ramp was recently completed, and they'll move on and start construction now on the 3-story office and dealership building. The third level will be the corporate offices for Walzer, and then the dealership will be on the levels 1 and 2. Fire Station 4 is under construction. They're working on the foundation now. It's at 84th Street in Irwin. Hyatt House Hotel, extended stay hotel, remains under construction at Old Shakopee Road and 86th Street. And then the BCS 4 building that we talked about will include a grocer at the ground level. I think it's about 14,000 square foot grocer, which will be a great addition to the South Loop district. And then Verizon is underway with their 14,000 square foot expansion in the Western Industrial area. SICK is nearing completion on their first phase. This shows all 4 phases. First phase here is nearing completion. In terms of entitled and future construction, we'll see a 2-level expansion at the Seagate facility along 494. The former Days Inn site, again, this is HRA owned site, will be redeveloped for a major electric vehicle manufacturer dealership. We have the Business Resource Center underway. Barb Wolf and others are working on that, but it will be a renovation of the Fire Station number 3 in the South Loop District. And then the water park will be one of the larger projects connected to the mall. We're hoping that will get underway yet this year. And then a few recently completed projects. The Bank of America on 98th Street near Lindale is now open. Luther Subaru, a new 2-level dealership, is open. And then the self-storage U-Haul facility on Lindale Avenue. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Good. Are there any questions for, yes, Commissioner Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Out of curiosity, that Hyatt House project off of 86th, I know that sat at a standstill, but it seemed like a year and a half, 2 years. Do we have an idea when that's getting across the finish line?
Chair Lewis, Commissioner Martin, we don't have a good estimate. It's definitely been a very prolonged construction process with the impacts on the hotel industry. It impacted their funding levels.
Gotcha.
And they had to kind of slow down on construction. But we are seeing very slow progress there, but I can't give you a date for certain.
Yeah, just curious. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Markegard? Hearing none, thank you so much. That was a really, really good report. I was really excited about the number of affordable units that we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6.2, the annual housing report from 2021. Mike Palermo is with us, going to be giving us that report.
Thank you, Chair Lewis and Commissioners. So I'm Mike Palermo. I'm with the Planning Division and part-time with the HRA. So part of my duties as part-time with the HRA, I've been working on an annual housing report. You may remember last year we did a similar report, but it was really focused on what the HRA does. And this year we're kind of revamping a little bit and just trying to do more of an all things housing report and kind of work in our interdivisional work here and make sure that all our numbers are coming together from assessing, from our environmental health, from all the divisions that kind of touch upon housing and make sure we're kind of pulling all our data together for a report. So these will be some highlights and we'll get into some details. And if you have questions, feel free to jump in. This is more conversational and we'll get started here. There we go. So the report structure, we broke it down into these sections that are focused on demographics, existing housing stock, what is the affordability of that housing stock, and how are we addressing affordability with our programs. And then it jumps into a little bit of what Glenn was talking about with new development, and then just a little preview of what's next in our work plan for the year. So I'll review demographics with you. So as you may know, Bloomington continues to grow. You can see here that we had a little bit of a drop going from 1990 to 2000 to 2010. Our population shrunk a little bit, and that was largely due to our average household size was shrinking. We had kids leaving, and you now have 2 people where 3 people were living. So you can see where our households kind of grew. But this year in 2020, now with the decennial census, we've shown that our average household size is kind of flatlined. It had a slight uptick at about 0.01 people per household. But as you saw with all those units, we continue to grow because of unit production, that we're now have more places for people to live. And as you can see, we're forecasting that Consul and Bloomington that we'll have about 95,000 residents by 2040. And if all these units get built, it could be even more than that, right? But it will be also interesting to see how our average household size changes over time as well, and what those impacts are. And so where's that growth happening? In 2010, 2008, when we updated our comprehensive plan, which we update on a 10-year cycle, we were really focused on 3 development areas: our Normandale Lake District, our Penn American District, and the South Loop District, so in red there. And what ended up happening in that decade was that's where we saw growth. You can see 15 and 16% growth in these census tracts. You can see 20% growth in the Penn American and 30% growth in population. So it really kind of, what we had put in the comp plan really reflected in that population change, although we have seen growth throughout the city. And now in the last comprehensive plan, which is now 5 years now, goes quickly, but we talked about also leveraging our high frequency transit. So we have the Orange Line that now has opened. So we have our station area plan in 98th Street area that we're looking to concentrate. We've since done the Lyndale retrofit plan, which talked about creating 2 dense neighborhoods along Lyndale. And there's other opportunities to take advantage of the D-Line bus rapid transit that might come in. So there might be other opportunities for growth and infill development as well, beyond just the development districts that we focus on. And so Bloomington is interesting in that we're both getting older. Our population over 65 has grown, but we're also getting younger. Our population under 18 has grown. So on a whole, we still skew much older than the metro. We're at 42.6 as our median age. Edina's a little bit older than us, but we're a little bit higher than the metro, which is about 40 for a median age. And you can see like Brooklyn Park is on the other end, almost 10 years younger at 34.4. And so you can imagine they have a lot more children that are changing that median age. We're also changing in our racial and ethnic makeup. And this has been pretty consistent over the last 20, 30 years. We've seen about a 10% change in our BIPOC population, our Black, Indigenous, people of color. So we're right about 32% of our population is BIPOC. And those have different implications on how we're running programs, how we're looking at making sure we have the adequate housing stock. So an interesting factoid is that our BIPOC households are larger. They have, on average, 3.7 people per household. So they're largely comprised of families, as our non-white or non-Hispanic white population is 2.1 people per household. So that's 1.5 people difference. So as we're looking to make sure that we have the adequate units and movement in the market, it's something to consider. And we looked at where population growth was occurring just in general, but we can see our BIPOC population is growing everywhere in Bloomington. You can see growth, 400, 500 people in most of these census tracts. So it's not one part of the city where we're seeing that growth, it's throughout the city that we're seeing that growth. An interesting thing as we're talking about household size is looking at our renters versus owners, that households with children, because that's when you think of larger households typically have children. And it's actually pretty equal between our renter and our owner occupied housing units. They're both about 25% of the households have children. So when we typically think owner, we think single family, we think family, right? But in all actuality, our renter households, which we typically think multifamily, they're occupied with the same amount of children and families as well. So that's another thing to consider as we're looking at when we're putting money into projects, how do we make sure we have the units that are matching? So importance of those 3-bedroom units. So looking at our existing housing stock, we have about 40,000 units in Bloomington. About 53%, or just over 50%, is that single-family housing stock. That's where we saw a lot of where Bloomington grew up, right, in single-family homes, and now we're seeing a lot of that development in multifamily because we're a built-out city and you have your opportunities in those denser nodes. So we have about 13,000 multifamily units. Our condos, townhomes, and co-ops, they only make up about 16%, and there's interesting, we don't see a lot of condo development. It is renter multifamily that we see. There's laws that have made it more difficult for condos to be developed, that there's a lot more risk for those developers. So it's really, I've seen one statistic that's a 30-to-1 ratio on multifamily to condos being built. So when we're looking at ownership opportunities right now, it's really in that single family or two-family home kind of attached single family. But our single-family home value, as you've seen, you probably saw your assessing report if you're a homeowner, has gone way up. I think it is, 16.6% there in the last year, but it's 25% in the last 2 years. So that value is increased considerably. The good news is with this increase, that market value, that pressure has been on all property values, so it's not, you won't see that whole lot in your taxes going up for that reason, because our commercial properties have also gone up in value. But it still highlights the fact that houses being sold are at a much higher level than they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. And that pressure on your household income, which might not be rising at the same amount. But you can see in all our kind of typical ownership, condo, townhomes, they've all seen a large increase as well. And in 2008, when we had the housing bubble, we saw a real kind of sharp increase in single-family homes that were being rented. Saw a lot of foreclosures that were happening, and people saw it as an opportunity to buy a unit or a house in a foreclosure and start renting it. And you can see we've kind of just continued to grow until about 2016, where our single-family homes rental license kind of flattened out here. About 1,400 single-family homes are now rentals. So again, when you're thinking about family size, that maybe that's a good thing that there are these larger units for rental. But it's an interesting thing that we'll see as this value sharply increased in the last 2 years. Will this affect rentals? We've known that we've seen a lot of turnover in the rental licensing, but it seems to be that everyone that we lose, we get a new one coming in. So we're not entirely sure where this trend is going or if it will continue to kind of remain stable. And then looking at affordability of renter households. So you can see down here, we were talking earlier in the previous presentation about our income bands, our 30, 50, 60% area median income. And these are kind of the rents that would be affordable based on the number of bedrooms per unit for your monthly rent. And I put that up there just to compare to what is kind of our average rent. So now we're entering in 2022, I should kind of point out, these are all from last year's report. This is 2021. These have gone up considerably for 2022. I think, Erica, it was like 12% that they raised. HUD came out with new numbers just last week.
Yes, thank you, Mike. For a 50% AMI on a 4-bedroom, the rent is over $1,700 as the new limits have come out.
So that'll be interesting to continue to track. But right now, so this is the end of 2021, what our average rents were. And just they kind of align somewhat with that 60% area median income. And just as a point of reference, we're we're a little bit below what the metro average is. We're maybe 5 to 10%, depending on which bedrooms. And as we get new units, we'll probably get pretty closer to that because our new units tend to be more luxury units. So, which highlights the importance of the Opportunity Housing Ordinance, where we require an affordable component to that. But another interesting fact is that last year, our vacancy rate was about 2.3%, so it was really kind of a tight market, and now we're at a healthy 6.1%. So it'll be interesting as even more units come on where that will land. 6% is good. There's movement in the market. If you think about it and how we look at unemployment, if we have too low of unemployment, that means there's too many jobs. If we have too high of unemployment, it means we have a labor shortage. So you want to have that ability to have some movement, but not too much. So 6% is usually considered about healthy. And so it'll be interesting as we get more units, if they will fill up quickly and how that will be reflected in rent moving forward. And related to that, we also track our naturally occurring affordable housing. So these are units that are affordable without a subsidy or rent restriction. So typically it's because of the age of the unit. They're Class C properties usually, and they're built in the 70s, so they've been around a while, and we don't want to lose them because if they get converted, all of a sudden now rent goes way up. We don't have a unit for an affordable unit for someone to move into. So they're an important part of the housing market to kind of make sure that we retain and aren't displacing people who need that. And so in this case, we use CoStar. It's a proprietary database. CoStar actually owns apartments.com, so they collect most information about rent. They tend to miss some of the smaller mom and pop operations that might not use their service to kind of list their available units. But so that's why you see a little asterisk here. We don't quite have all the units captured out there, but it's a pretty close summary. And our total NOAA percentage is about a little under half of our units. And this is an interesting thing that we found out tracking. This is now we're in our third year of tracking now. And about 15% of our units or so are within 5% of kind of the 60% AMI rents. So as you can imagine, if we increase by $50 a month or decrease by $50 a month, we can jump 7% in one direction or 7% in the other direction. So you might see a 20% difference between January of one year and June of the same year, just on a small amount of shift. So we're tracking over time, and it seems to hover about that 45%, and we'll continue to see where that trend line is. And it can vary by the unit type, especially when you think studios and 3 bedrooms. We don't have a lot of studios, and our efficiencies, and we don't have a lot of 3 bedrooms. So a slight shift in that can change that percentage quite a bit. But our 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, it hovers in that kind of 45% area. And then what would affordable home ownership look like for 60% AMI? HUD would have that at $316,000 for last year, which was actually pretty close to what our median home value was assessed at. So it matches fairly close with Bloomington, and understanding that we have a wide range of housing available, from $1 million homes to smaller starter homes. And these are kind of the assumptions that I use to get to that 316. So one issue, we were talking about our racial and ethnic demographics changing. Well, this is an issue that pops up with our ownership rates. You can see our white non-Hispanic population head of households own at about 75% versus 25% are renters, whereas our African American and Black households are under 20% ownership. So that's a threefold difference, and it's hard to even speak about. That's a huge discrepancy, right? And so this is where our programs and our first-time home buyer programs are important, and how we can find ways to increase that ownership is important, because we know there are all sorts of benefits with ownership. It's not a silver bullet, but there are opportunities there are benefits to home ownership and thinking about generational wealth building. Another aspect to affordability is unemployment and your income. So besides rent and how much it costs to rent a home, do you have an income to match that? So Bloomington really kind of follows the metro pretty closely. This is our unemployment rate, with the yellow lines Hennepin County, the green lines the metro region. We're really close. In the pandemic, we jumped a little bit higher than the metro, but it seems to be that we've recovered and we're really close, 3.9%, which again, that's a pretty healthy rate for unemployment, and we'll be, hopefully can keep that up. In our top industries, the people who live in Bloomington, they work in, 50% of our population works in these top 10 industries. So healthcare is the largest, healthcare and social assistance by far, followed by retail trade, professional services, manufacturing, food service, education, administrative support, waste management. It's an interesting name. I think it's just kind of a catch-all office that doesn't quite fit in kind of professional services and doesn't quite fit with financial, but it's more kind of the office type stuff. And then wholesale trade and management of companies. And then how does that reflect in our median income then? Well, in 2000, we used to be a little bit higher than the metro. And in 2010, we fell behind a little bit, behind Hennepin County in the region. But as we've grown in 2020, we seem to be kind of that same amount, a little bit lower. So it seems to be tracking with the metro rather than lagging behind. And so you have your income, you have how much it costs, and then really when the rubber hits the road, it's how much percentage of your income are you paying for housing? And if you're paying more than 30% of your income for housing, you're considered housing cost burden. You're burdened by how much is going into your rent or your mortgage and all the associated living costs. So 42% of our renter households pay more than 30% of their income. So that's a pretty large amount, especially when you compare to our ownership, which is about 23%. And that's part of the story. The other aspect is being severely cost burdened. So this is where you pay more than 50% of your income for housing costs. And that in Bloomington is about 1 in 10 households. So that's 10% of our population pay more than 50% for housing costs. And you can imagine if you're paying 50% of your paycheck into housing, 50% left for your transportation, for food, for healthcare, it goes quickly. And so when we're tracking that median value of our single family homes, it's kind of lagging data here with our housing cost burden. It will be interesting to see what, if any, impact that increase will have. Will incomes rise appropriately? It's one of those things that we'll continue to monitor and track and make sure, we see the need already for our rental households. And so our programs are hopefully making some inroads in that. The good thing with our ownership, though, as of now, we haven't seen any issues with that rising cost. We haven't seen foreclosure, so we haven't had to worry too much about doing foreclosure assistance because we just aren't seeing a ton of them. We've been tracking this since 2008, and you can see in the last couple of years it's kind of flatlined. In the last year, it was about 9 households for 6 months, so not a ton. Not nothing. We would like it to be nothing, but when we're prioritizing. So looking at the programs that we provide, so HRA administers housing choice vouchers. Their Section 8 program, it's one of their larger programs. They have 650 households were served in the last year. 529 are tenant-based vouchers, whereas 111 are portability vouchers. Those are people moving into Bloomington that are served by other, that had vouchers. 28 project-based vouchers, those kind of run with the units that are created. It's the project that it's based on. And then we've issued 36 new vouchers in the last year. And then some interesting new vouchers that were available: Foster Youth for Independence. We've received 10 vouchers, so those are at-risk youth to prevent homelessness, essentially, give them a voucher. And then similarly, there's Veterans Affairs Support Housing, or VASH is the acronym, that are targeted toward veterans. And then over and under 190 households were served through our housing stability, emergency housing, and rental utility assistance. Some interesting information about that: 82% were BIPOC, and 100% of participants were extremely low income or low income, so that's making 50% area median income or less. We also started to do homeless outreach with St. Stephen's Human Services. They were making sure they were going out and working with the city, working with our police department, working with our social workers, working with public health, environmental health, to make sure that they're doing outreach and addressing issues where people didn't have adequate housing, that they were living in spots that weren't fit for human habitation. So they engaged with 38 individuals and were serving 53. I guess you can go more into that. I'm not as familiar with the program, so.
Yes, thank you, Mike. 38 individuals engagements and 53 services rendered. So out of those 38 individuals, there may have been clothing, may have been housing, may have been mental health, just different services, and some of them had more than one service.
And we also provided emergency temporary housing with Bloomington Public Schools, and they serve 2 households. Then there are other programs that we focus on ownership. So that really focused on housing stability and getting people into housing. Then ownership, we provide the rental homes for future home buyers. This is a unique program where we have 21 properties that we manage, and families live there, and part of what they pay, I believe, goes into an escrow account, and then they can use that money when they leave the program to purchase a home. So part of that is basically saving for that down payment. So we have 21 homes that we conduct that in. We had 6 move this year and 2 purchased homes. So the program's working as it was designed. We also contracted with the Minnesota Home Ownership Center, and they provide a wide range of services, but they do home buyer education courses. They served 44 houses for us. Home ownership advising services, where they serve 32 households. They do financial wellness advising with 22 households, and then some of that foreclosure prevention service, 9 households. So hopefully that's part of why our foreclosures are lower and stabilized and not increasing. But also we provide a home improvement loan program. So many people might have heard of this, but we provide over $630,000 in loans last year alone. So a large amount of money is going back into rehabbing people's homes. We administer the HELP program, I like that acronym, Housing and Environmental Loan Program. And then there's also a Brush with Kindness program that we partner with Habitat for Humanity. Then we also have our housing improvement area, which we just recently revised and adopted the policy, and I think we had an applicant.
In 2022's application period, we did get an applicant, and we are processing the application.
And so I won't go too much into new development. I think Glenn thoroughly went through that. But this gives you kind of where we're at with housing production. And you can see that affordable component really not much there before 2019. And 2019 is when we adopted that opportunity housing ordinance and have a requirement for 9% of the units to have an affordability component. So it really started to generate those units and be created. So these are units created. And then here's a map. This is pulled from a interactive map that the public can access, where they can click on these points and kind of pull up more information about the different developments. And it pulls up what that affordability component is. So Glenn was talking about his cheat sheet, and this is kind of what it looks like. But we can track against our Met Council affordability goals. So we talked about the comp plan. As part of when we update the comprehensive plan on a 10-year cycle, Met Council kind of determines what Bloomington's allocation for the region should be. And those goals, while the comp plan looks to the 2040, those goals are to 2030. So we're getting along there. But you can see that in that 60% area median income, I think question was asked, where were we at with that? 444 units have either opened or under construction or approved. In fact, we've had almost 200 actually open, which is well above our goal for the 60% AMI units. Now we're making progress on that 50% on where we are with open, under construction, or approved. We're making progress, but at that 30%, very extremely low income, we really only have 33 that have been approved, 17 that have opened so far, and so a lot of new housing that's needed in that range. So just some pictures I went out and took. Here's Hayden Grove that you saw, or the district apartments. This is in our Penn American district. Hayden Grove is on Portland Avenue near the library. Penn American with the district apartments, not the district apartments, district apartments. The Air apartments, this was on their website, so I just thought it kind of looked cool, a little more interesting than just the hotel outside, but this is what the units actually look like with the conversion. And then Lindale Flats, this opened at 90th and Lindale. And so I can jump into what's next. So we're looking at single resident occupancy standards, looking at units that maybe don't have a bathroom, or maybe they have a bathroom but don't have a kitchen. They have more shared facilities to make it more affordable because they're smaller, kind of micro units. And what would that look like in Bloomington? Is that something we should or could explore? It's kind of just a research project that's on our list. Hennepin County, they're really pushing for this because they find that in their shelters, I'm forgetting the exact statistic, but something like 70 or 80% of people who are accessing their emergency shelters have income. They have a job, they just don't have a place to live. So if we need those deeply affordable, those 30% or lower units, there might be some opportunity with a single residency occupancy. I think you were there for the accessory dwelling unit discussion. And we just were talking about that at staff meeting today. And Sean James, who was previously working that, he started a new position, but we have a new planner who's taking that on, and we'll be ushering that through the ordinance process pretty soon here. And then with the single and two family home standards, that's something I continue to work on. And this summer we'll be doing some engagement and bringing that back to council, hopefully late summer or early fall with an ordinance update. We were talking about 8200 Humboldt going through Penn townhomes and solo apartments. Those were all approved projects that we're hoping will move forward. And then our home buyer mortgage assistance program, which I believe we're using ARP funds to do, and this gets to kind of maybe that ownership gap. Maybe we can make inroads in that with this program. So with that, questions. The report goes into a lot more, and didn't want to take all your time.
Thank you, Mr. Palermo. No, I really appreciated having such an in-depth report. Are there any questions for Mr. Palermo? Yes, Commissioner Hukim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one thing that when you were kind of going over like with the NOAA properties, have we talked, or has there been talk about maybe doing some incentives for those properties to kind of keep them from maybe falling under that, redevelopment or anything like that? Just kind of because I do know the value of those.
Yeah. And as you recall, with the Blooming Meadows, that was a property that we were able to intervene at. They are able to access some incentives of the Opportunity Housing Ordinance if they're able to preserve some units. And but yeah, I think it really becomes a funding stream issue on they're expensive and it goes quickly, and they're private brokers that flip them. So, or we might not even hear of a sale. So it's hard to get in on the front end, but yeah, we are kind of working at how we preserve that, and there are some programs that we are exploring to maybe further incentivize that. And to hopefully kind of retain those units. But yeah, it's a tough one because, yeah, the market hasn't cooled at all for purchasing and flipping. So we have our tenant protection ordinance to hopefully kind of at least mitigate when that does happen, mass displacement. But yeah, hopefully maybe Erica has more she can share on that.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to add that we do participate, when I say we, myself, Mike, in a NOAA working group, as it was cited in our work plan. That's more of a regional approach. And I know yesterday evening the council brought up about Bloomington bearing responsibility or bearing everything. This one is more of a regional approach because this is not specific to Bloomington. However, we do care. We are at the table. But it's something that we're seeing that I think Minnesota Housing is even involved in heading those meetings to talk about different initiatives, different actions, how we can take that on a regional approach to look at preserving NOAA property and what that might look like.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To that point, I mean, it's been a few years now, but there was that NOAA, excuse me, for the record, I took a COVID test earlier today and I tested negative. I think it's just my springtime allergies. But it's been a few years now, but there was that, Mike, you know what I'm talking about, the matrix, that's the word I was looking for.
Yes, so we
NOAA
kind of,
strategies.
Yep, and we transitioned that to our Bloomington Housing Action Team, and we're kind of continuing to meet sporadically. We saw with the pandemic, it was much harder to engage with virtual meetings, and so we're trying to kind of come up with a schedule to re-engage, and kind of some of these issues here that we'll be getting into throughout the year, we'll be engaging that group more on. Because what ended up happening was, as we got the Opportunity Housing Ordinance passed, the Tenant Protection Ordinance. These were kind of big projects that they rallied behind. And then we started to do more development updates and data, and it seemed a little steam kind of lost, and then it was hard. It was a great networking, I think, for people, but as we went to virtual, they kind of lost some of that connection. So hopefully as we get back, we can start doing some more in-person and get some of those players in, because we did have some regional participants in that, which was really beneficial as we start to lobby and think about some of these regional approaches to some of these issues.
Yeah, and I raise that mostly because, I mean, obviously, like I said, it's been a few years, but I think there probably are still some strategies that were on that matrix that may be worth looking at. One of the thoughts that I had, particularly as we've talked about, on the city council, we've talked about single-family home flippers as well.
Right.
But the right of first refusal is, I think, probably due for a comeback at some point in the not too distant future. And then the other comment I just wanted to make, I know we have probably just gotten so used to the numbers now, but when you see all of the numbers with the affordable housing production that we've done, it really, really is impressive. And that bar graph you had of where things were before 2019, I mean, it's pretty clear what happened there, and that's really, really impressive. And I think that speaks to the leadership that the city has shown on taking on this issue. And I know a lot of other cities in the metro area would love to have what we have. And I think that speaks to our leadership, and it speaks to how well I think the Opportunity Housing Ordinance was designed and has been reevaluated in that time to sort of address needs as they have arisen. So,
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Hukim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, again. Just more of a comment. I'd really like to, we were part of that discussion with like the little kind of pod communities, I think is kind of like the little tiny home communities.
Right, that'll...
I'd like to hear that, keep that conversation, and I hope that Bloomington's really going to support that conversation, because it brings me back to mobile home parks, and it brings me back to the most affordable housing we had back in the day, especially for immigrant families, for people of color. And Bloomington really, we did push a few of those out. And so I think this is a way to kind of bring some of that back the ability to own a property, even though you may not own the land that it's on. You rent the land, you own the property, but you have that community around you. I think, anyway, I'm a big advocate for that, and I'd really like to see Bloomington carry that conversation further.
Yep, and that will be yep, that's on the work plan as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, thank you again, Mr. Palermo. It was a very in-depth report, and really good to see that too. So thank you so much.
Chair?
Yes.
So I just want to say that was the presentation of the housing report for the HRA board, but the actual report will be finalized with our communications department, and it will be released.
And available for
the public and everyone, yes.
Great. I want everyone to see it. Thank you so much. Yes. All right. We are going to move on to item 6.3, Commissioner questions. And I love the fact that we have answers in there, too. I'm kind of thinking comments more than answers. But if you have any answers, I'm open for answers tonight. Do the commissioners have anything that they would like to bring up? Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Coulter. Sorry.
Sorry, and I maybe should have asked Ms. Coleman if she was going to bring this up, but you all know from my day job, I work at the state legislature, and of interest and note to this body is that the legislation that the city of Bloomington has requested that would expand the HRA board, it has passed the House, and it is up in the Senate on Thursday. And unless one of our legislators decides to go rogue, I expect that it will pass the Senate and will be on its way to the governor, hopefully within the week.
Oh, that is wonderful. That's a really good update. Thank you. Yeah,
Which will mean we will need to open up for application period.
that's also very exciting.
Yes.
So, yes. All right. Well, that's a very good comment. Thank you. Now, moving on to number 7, adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the May 10th, 2022 meeting of the HRA Board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Martin with a second by Commissioner Hukim to adjourn the May 10th, 2022 HRA Board meeting. May we have a vote, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. The meeting is adjourned at 7:02. Thank you.